And good evening, sports fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tonight we will be taking our usual broad look around the DMV landscape. We'll start off in football, where a lot has happened since we last spoke. The Ravens have managed to cram not one, but two games in to the past week, and managed to win them both, including a very significant divisional matchup. We're going to talk about what that means for them for the last two games of the season and the playoff implications thereof. We'll also, of course, take a look at the Commanders, who had a game coming off of their bye week against the Saints. It was not the prettiest of victories, but it was a victory, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. But we're going to talk about our concerns with them moving forward as well. We will then move over to hockey, where the Caps had a little bit of a rough start to the week, but they picked it up at the end. We're going to look at our player of the week and get an update, a week update on Alex Ovechkin as he recovers from injury. We'll also take a look at the Wizards. That's right, they are the Wizards this week because they did manage a victory. We're going to talk about that, their loss, and who their player of the week was, and also discuss a couple of intriguing baseball notes, all while continuing our holiday beverage month with a beverage that you drink in a mug. What does that mean? You'll have to find out here. We've got all that and more coming up on Let's Whine About DMV Sports on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And once again, good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and who for the past 10 and a half years has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. If you have not done so already, please follow us on all social media platforms on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, all of the above at IE Sports Radio. Be sure to follow yours truly at Let's Whine _IESR. You can find me on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can listen to us live here on StreamYard, on X, and on Instagram, but also on numerous other platforms. We're on Apple Podcast, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and so much more. And whether you're listening live to the show right now or listening later on in the week when you have a little bit of time, it is all greatly appreciated, and you've got tons of options to do so. And of course, you can't do all of that without checking out our website, iesportsradio.com. There you will find our merchandise. We just released a whole bunch of new merchandise connected to a sponsor. So do go check out a bunch of new stuff on there. So even if you checked it out 3 days ago or last week on my show, you gotta go back because there's new stuff for you to look at, in addition to some of the classics that we have on there as well. You will also find our show pages, including the link to yours truly's, but all of the shows. We have over 30 shows here on the network covering all different cities, topics, sports. We have the best volleyball podcast on the internet, cover a whole bunch of different topics. And on those show pages, you can find a little bit about the show and the voice behind it. You can also find our blog on our website, or you can also find it at iesportsradioblog.wordpress.com. New piece up this week from Ricky Kay, the host of the State of New York Sports show here on the network, which airs on Mondays. So do check that out, talking about a pretty interesting topic with Juan Soto moving across town from the Yankees to the Mets. Definitely a hot topic there. And of course, you can find so much more on the website. You can find our Hall of Fame Fan of the Month, our show schedules with our show schedules for every day throughout the week. And of course, none of this would be possible without our sponsor. So we're going to take a moment to hear more about them, including a new sponsor.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
And welcome back to Let's One About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Beef Brisket Jerky, jerky that's on a whole other planet. Go to their website, planetjerky.net, and get yours today. Seal the Deal Wax Seals, custom wax seals, the perfect touch for your special event or occasion. You bring the deal, they'll bring the seal. So definitely check them out at Instagram at seal the deal _wax seals. And our new sponsor, IE Sports Radio, has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Definitely a great cause there. Not something we take lightly, our mental health. So that is a wonderful cause, and we are proud to be sponsoring with them. We've got a ton of sports to get to, but first, of course, we must get to our beverage of the evening. We are continuing with Holiday Beverage Month, and I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but it's really cold here where I am in North Carolina. And it's even better because I'm going to a Panthers game tomorrow, and it's going to be like high of 40 at its peak. It's going to be in the 30s for most of the game. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to be bundled up very well, but this is also the time of year where the warm beverages start coming out. Now, think of the beverages we talk about: wine, beer, occasionally a mixed drink. Not really stuff that, is usually consumed warm. Some of it has higher alcohol content and a little bit heartier, so it warms you up a little bit better. But tonight we have a beverage that is actually warm, and it's one that we've had before, and I'm not going to be able to see it, although shout out to Biltmore. I've got my little Biltmore mug right here. But this is a mulled wine, specifically a German mulled wine by a brand called Glühwein. Now, what is a mulled wine? Not M-O-L-D, as you will see right here, the spelling M-U-L-L-E-D. The mulled literally means cooked with spices. So this is wine, typically some type of simple, ordinary, not extraordinary red wine that winemakers will literally cook it in a container with different kinds of spices: cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, like some fruits, cranberries, oranges, apples, to impart new flavors into the wine. So they cook it, it absorbs all of these really awesome flavors, it all kind of mixes together, and then you cool it off a little bit, bottle it, and send it out. Now, because of the way it's made, it is also better enjoyed warm. Hence, I warmed some of this up and put it in a mug. And again, I don't really have a great way to show it to you because it's just a simple red wine. This is not a wine that you look for body or tannin or acidity or dryness or complexity or look. This is a wine that you drink because it's typically drunk warm and it's cold outside. It warms you up. Not typically high in alcohol content. This one's about 8.5%. They usually float in that 8 to 9, maybe occasionally kicking up to 9.5% range. But their purpose is that they are warm and they taste of those seasonal spices for Christmas. This one already had a little bit of that seasonal spice and cranberry flavor to it. When I cooked it, I threw in a cinnamon stick and a couple of orange slices, and that imported a little bit more flavor and a little bit more intriguing complexity to it. But it tastes lovely. It tastes like Christmas. It doesn't have a lot of those typical wine characteristics. You can enjoy it cold, but it does come through better warm. And before we go through, we have a couple of relevant comments. First, we got Adam Karnick in the chat room. Happy holidays. Saying, mulled wine, we're going fancy tonight. Not that fancy. This bottle that I'm partaking in is a 1 liter bottle as opposed to your 750 milliliter standard wine bottle. It is a 1 liter bottle that is $10. So mulled wine, not particularly fancy. And fun fact, you can actually usually make your own mulled wine if you go to the right store. Now, Total Wines used to have mulling spices. Some of them still do, some of them don't. Some grocery stores probably have them as well. But general rule of thumb is mulling spices are mulling spices. You're not going to find like a ton of different variants around. Get your mulling spices and then go to a wine store. And if they have them there, you can get it all in one place. But you go to your wine store and you ask an associate what would be a good wine for a mulled wine, and they will point you in the right direction. Usually it's a simple, basic, not expensive red wine, probably a blend, maybe a Merlot, maybe something Spanish perhaps, maybe something German even. You should not be spending a ton on this bottle of wine either. If you are spending more than $7 or $8 on a bottle of wine that you are then going to cook and mull, then you're probably wasting your money, in all honesty. Adam also chimes in that he's making a ham butt with pineapple rings for Christmas. Good wine suggestion for that. So you've got some nice saltiness and some good flavor with the ham, plus a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of acidity with the pineapple rings. So you've got some complex flavors going there. So you don't want anything too robust, too intense, so that you have fights going on in your mouth. I would probably recommend either a Pinot Noir or an interesting thought I had as I was reading this question, because you sent it a few minutes ago, a lovely Chianti would actually probably go well, because Chiantis have some nice red fruit flavors, which is going to complement the pineapple and the ham. It's not going to be overly acidic, but it's going to have good balance, and especially if you go for a Chianti Classico or Chianti Reserva, it does give you that little extra depth and layer of flavor, but a regular Chianti is fine. So I think that would be my recommendation for that one. I don't know why that option's really sticking out in my head, but I'm going to say a Chianti, or perhaps if you wanted to also go fancy, and the reason why I put fancy in quotation marks is because you can find a Chianti for like $15. You don't need to shell out for a Chianti. You could probably also go with a Spanish Garnacha, which is going to have a similar kind of profile characteristic. We also have Taryn Rodriguez jumping in the chat saying, "Good evening, sir. Thank you. And you have a good evening as well. Happy holidays to all of you out there. And have an amazing show." He also has another comment, but we're going to get to it in a moment. We're going to take our first break here before we dive into our sports. So do not go away. You're listening to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Calise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate, diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold, have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Calise, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Hey, Cleveland and Columbus sports fans, this is Jen D, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in live to the Show of the Land on Tuesdays, where we will cover the Cleveland Browns, Cavs, Guardians, and Monsters. We will also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Crew, Fury, and of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also cover other colleges in the area like Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, Mount Union, John Carroll, Baldwin Wallace, Youngstown State, among others. So like I said, if you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in Tuesdays to the Show of the Land with Jen B on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to Let's Wine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We have covered our beverage, we have covered our admin, we have covered our sponsors, we've covered our first break. I think it's about time, folks, that we started talking about some sports, and we're going to kick it off with football. So we had both of our teams coming off of the bye this past weekend. Let's start with the Commanders and see how they fared. They would win their game against the Saints 20-19. Really interesting, really strange game with a couple of respects. One, they started off hot. They had a 14-0 lead at the halftime, gave it away at the end a bit. Saints scored a touchdown as time expired to make it 2019, went for the 2-point conversion and failed, so that's why we have the 20-19 victory. Weird moment with the play clock in this one. So the Saints made a pass and got the ball down to like the 3-yard line, or something like the 2 or 3 yard line, with 11 seconds left. Now, if you watch the game clock as this happens, so the pass is completed inbounds, the player gets tackled down. The clock gets down to 9 seconds and then stops for a good solid 3 seconds. And I think that's because the official explanation, which actually makes sense with what you see in the replay, is that one of the officials was waving their hands to like stop the clock. For some reason, there was absolutely no reason for him to be doing that. It was definitely 100% a mistake. But the clock management team saw that and paused the clock for what seemed like 3 to 4 seconds, and then it restarted. Now, meanwhile, everybody's scrambling to get the ball placed and get a snap off so that they could spike the ball and get one final play. Well, they managed to spike the ball with 3 seconds left on the clock. Now, the clock froze for 3 to 4 seconds, and then they stopped it with 3 seconds. So you do the math. The game should have been over if not for this egregious error. Now, thankfully, that error did not end up costing the Commanders a game, but this one was much closer than it should have been, especially for a team coming off of the bye. It's definitely a concerning result, but at the end of the day, a win is a win, and the team moves to 9-5. Now, they cannot get away with that same effort in this upcoming week's game with the Eagles at home. Now, this game has some divisional implications. Not really a ton, though. The Eagles are 12-2. In fact, they might already have the division clinched. I want to double check that really quick. Do the Eagles already have the division clinched? Let's see. So it is not marked as clinched yet. And seeing it, yeah, if the Eagles lose out and the Commanders win out, then yes, it looks like the Commanders would be able to take the division. But let's be real. The Eagles are 12-2. They've got the Commanders and then home against the Cowboys and the Giants. They're not losing all 3 of those games. The Eagles are going to win this division. This game is more so for a pride point. And to show that they're playing good, competent football at this stage of the season as they prepare for the playoffs. Even if they win, like I said, I don't think the division is in play. Although, for their playoff argument, as they still hold the 7th seed, even at 9-5, would be beneficial to get that 10th win in this one and alleviate some of the pressure of having to beat the Cowboys and Falcons, not 2 impossible teams, but 2 other teams fighting for playoff aspirations as well in the final 2 weeks of the season. A couple of fun comments, by the way. Adam Karnick, I recommended a Chianti, and he said he's making baked beans, not fava beans. This is a reference to Hannibal Lecter, the famous movie villain from The Silence of the Lambs, where he made a quote that said, and if I'm going to try to get this quote as correct as possible, a census taker tried to test me once upon a time. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. So, no, sir, just because you're not having fava beans does not mean you cannot drink the Chianti. He also does note that Philly does still need a win, but I can't imagine them losing all 3 of those games, 2 of them being at home, 1 of them against the Giants. Enough said on that one. The Commanders do have a complicated clinching scenario for this week. That is correct. certain series of events goes right, a certain set of game results goes their way. A win has to happen, and then I believe it is, I think one of the Rams or Cardinals, Rams are involved, Falcons and Bucks are involved in some way, shape, or form. It's really screwy. I saw it and I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to put too much time and effort to that, especially with a game against the Eagles, which they have to win first. But they do have a chance to clinch this week. That is true. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to be looking for next week or the following week as our clinching moment. But one significant piece of one significant moment did happen. This was this morning, I believe. By the way, the U.S. Congress passed the RFK Stadium bill. Now, you might be asking yourself, what does our federal government have to do with a sports stadium? Well, for a little bit of background, the old RFK Stadium that the Redskins played in for many years back in the day, where a lot of the franchise's historical moments occurred. And of course, they don't no longer play there, but it is on federally owned land in Washington, D.C. Now, the bill, which had actually apparently been in processing for over a year trying to get through, and it came in different formats. There's one part where it was part of the government relief bill, but it got nixed out of that, and it just kind of became its own thing. It passed unanimously in the Senate, by the way. But what this bill does is it relinquishes management and control of the land from the federal government, which is good because they can't manage themselves, so I don't want them managing a football stadium site, to Washington, D.C.'s government entity. Now, this does open up a potential lane for the franchise to move actually back into D.C., where this site is. Currently, they play in Landover, Maryland, which is just outside of D.C., which is where FedEx Field is. But people love the history. They love the nostalgia. Now, the general consensus is that RFK Stadium is essentially a ruin at this point, and for all intents and purposes, they would have to tear it down and rebuild it from the ground up, modernize it. But this bill passing does open up that possibility. Now, we're not talking a move for at least another 4 or 5 years minimum, because now that the city has control of the land, they have to come up with a plan in coordination with the team to start taking action. They're going to need money, all that jazz. It's going to be a long process, and also tearing down and rebuilding a stadium is not something that you can do in a day. It's like Rome. Rome was not built in a day. You cannot tear down and rebuild a football stadium in a day. So this is not a move that's going to happen anytime soon, but it is a move that is now on the table for the Commanders to return to their namesake city of Washington, D.C. So that was a little bit of interesting news that came across this morning, especially after the provision in the government relief bill was nixed due to some misinformation on the internet. I'm not going to get into that. This is not a politics show. This is a sports show. We only talk about politics when it inconveniently sneaks its way into the discourse. So we're going to leave that topic on the table, but the bill passes, and the management and ownership of the land that RFK Stadium sits on now is relinquished to Washington, D.C. government. Not federal government, local government. So it's better. That's a step in the right direction, at least. All right, now let's move over to the Ravens, who have been busy since we last talked. It's funny, we went like 2 weeks without having to cover a game for the Ravens, and now we have 2 to cover in one show. So starting off really quick with the game right off the bye, they faced the Giants, won it handily 35-14. Lamar Jackson had one of his infamous Jackson 5 games, which is, of course, an homage to the Jackson family music band, group of singers that was popular in the 60s and 70s and 80s, I believe. Somewhere in that range. Probably not the 60s. Let's eliminate the 60s from that. Actually, it might have been the 60s. back in the 60s and 70s with Michael Jackson as the headliner, but they were called the Jackson Five, and a Jackson Five in Baltimore's terms references when Lamar Jackson throws for 5 touchdowns in a game, which has happened multiple times this season and like 5 or 6 times in his career. He actually is, I think, second or third, or maybe even tied for first all time in 5 passing touchdown games. So Jackson 5 game, complete and utter beatdown of the Giants. It was a great way to come off of the bye. Then they had their biggest game of the season to date against the Steelers. Now, the Steelers suffered a defeat against the Eagles last week, so that pulled Baltimore within a game of them for the division. Now, Pittsburgh had beaten Baltimore in Pittsburgh earlier this year, so that made this game of special significance. If Pittsburgh wins, then they win the division outright. Baltimore did not let that happen. They won this one 34-17. Don't let the score fool you. This game was close right up until the fourth quarter, when Baltimore managed to pull away. A pick six by Marlon Humphrey helped that. And then up by 2 scores, they got the ball on their 8-yard line and proceeded to have something like an 85 or a 90-yard drive that took up 6 of the remaining 8 minutes of the game and allowed them to kick a field goal, which put them up 3 scores. It completely demoralized the Steelers and took them out of this game. It was very tight and very dodgy at first, but like I said, this team made some key plays at the right moment. The Marlon Humphrey pick 6 ended up some momentum. They also had some momentum early in the game when it was tied at 7. Russell Wilson, however, scrambled out and was running down the field when safety Ardarius Washington, who, by the way, was a borderline roster candidate entering the season, and is now starting next to Kyle Hamilton, came out from the defensive backfield and landed a crushing hit on Wilson, who is not sliding. If he had slid, this would not have happened. And that hit knocked the ball loose, and the Ravens recovered it and prevented a Steelers score. So the Ravens made some key big plays in this game. They played nearly mistake-free football. There was 1 interception Lamar Jackson threw that he shouldn't have thrown. There were fumbles that I didn't like, but they recovered all of them. So, hey, I guess that works out, but I would like them to not be so fumble happy. And then Justin Tucker, who, of course, before the bye week we were worried about, made every kick today, 2 field goals and 4 extra points. And he made every kick in the Giants game. So he hasn't missed a kick since the bye week, which is great to see. And then very few penalties, only 2 penalties for the Ravens today. So I talked about this on the Yinzer report yesterday with Ralph Calise, my colleague. Great chat, great guy, love talking to him. We did a toast to the AFC North, still the best division in football, despite the Browns. We can just pretend they don't exist. Honestly, Browns sans Deshaun Watson might be the best 4th place team. No, you've got the 49ers this year. Might be the 2nd best 4th place team in the NFL. I would say the Browns sans Deshaun Watson, probably the 2nd best 4th place team in the NFL. Anyways, we talked about how, Baltimore has a tendency of beating themselves and Pittsburgh doesn't. Well, in this case, it was a little bit of the opposite, because Baltimore won the turnover battle and won the penalty battle, which Pittsburgh traditionally wins. So Baltimore beat them at their own game a little bit. And then on top of that, got some big plays from Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry was borderline unstoppable, averaging nearly 7 yards a carry on his way to putting up almost about 190 total yards of offense, rushing and receiving. So he had a great game. Mark Andrews caught a touchdown pass. Rashad Bateman and Isaiah Likely caught touchdown passes. Zay Flowers had 100 receiving yards, which put him over 1,000 for the season. So that was awesome to see for Zay to reach that mark, and Lamar Jackson had high praise for him. The offensive line did great. I think Lamar was only sacked twice. He might have only been sacked once even. I don't even know if he was sacked twice. Let's see. Of course, it's tough to sack Lamar anyways because of his rushing abilities. But let's confirm that really quick. How many times was Lamar Jackson sacked? He was only sacked once, so that was great. And the Steelers did have their full pass rushing repertoire. Cameron Hayward, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt and Nick Herbig, their top 4 pass rushers, were all playing today. Injury reports suggested they might not be, but they did indeed all play. So what are the implications of this victory? Well, it prevents the Steelers from winning the division. They are now tied in multiple aspects. Tied in division record, tied in overall record, and tied in head-to-head. So where does the tiebreaker fall? Well, currently the tiebreaker is in the conference record. Pittsburgh is 7-3, Baltimore is 6-4. So that's why Pittsburgh technically still holds the advantage. And by the way, Taryn Rodriguez had a great comment earlier. I was saving this comment, Taryn, for this particular segment. Ravens have the inside track of getting the 5 seed. That is very true. That's an interesting point because, and I'll add this in really quick, they own tiebreakers over both the Chargers and the Broncos. For head-to-head, they are completely clear of Miami, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis, who are like the 3 remnant teams still holding on. They're completely clear of them, so none of them have a chance. And both the Chargers and the Broncos have to beat them outright. So Baltimore just has to win one more game to permanently secure the 5 seed. And even then, they'd have to lose out, and one of the other two would have to win out in order for them to pass them. So Baltimore in a great position when it comes to the wild card. But what are the other implications? Well, actually, we were just talking about them. Baltimore's last 2 games at the Texans, tough matchup, division leader, not downplaying that one, and home against the Browns. Normally, I would say that's a good one, but the Browns did beat them. It was in Cleveland earlier this year, and Baltimore's defense is actually playing much better than they were playing at that time. So that's a favorable matchup, but that's Baltimore's last 2 games. Pittsburgh's last 2 games are against the Chiefs and against the Bengals, 2 way tougher opponents. The Chiefs, who always get help from, if anything, the refs. I'm just going to call it the way it is. I don't like the Chiefs, so I'm no qualms about saying that. And then the Bengals, who are hot as hellfire and chasing down a playoff spot. Now, they might be eliminated by that point, depending on how Denver and the Chargers play next week, although they already played, so we know their record. So if Cincinnati wins this week, they are still in the running for a playoff spot. So it'll be interesting to see how that chases down. They only need one of Denver or LA to lose in the last week, to lose next week, and then they keep winning, and now they've got a shot. The Bengals could sneak into that 7 seed, which makes me happy that Baltimore, Baltimore's likely 3, 4, or 5. So we avoid the Bengals, which I am happy to take that one because it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, and B, the Bengals are hot and they'd be looking for revenge. So I'm glad that our most likely numbers are 3, 4, or 5. To where actually it's really 3 or 5 because if we win the division, it would involve beating the Texans most likely, which would give us the advantage over the Texans. So really it's 3 or 5. The Texans basically have the division locked up. So if we beat the Texans, they're the 4 seed pretty much exclusively. But I digress. Keeps Baltimore in the division race, basically locks up the 5 seed and gives them a shot at winning the division. And it makes it even more interesting that these 2 teams could see each other again in the postseason. And like I mentioned, they've got the Texans on the road on Christmas. Texans just suffered a loss to the Chiefs, and now they have to play Baltimore on Christmas, a pretty well-rested Baltimore team coming off the bye as well. So that'll be a good game. I'm excited to see that one on Christmas, but I'm also excited to see how Pittsburgh and Kansas City play out because that is going to have equal implications on Baltimore's situation. That'll do it for the football segment of our show. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to finish it up talking Caps, Wizards, and baseball. Do not go away. You're listening to Let's Run About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to Let's Mind About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's jump into more sports, right? It's a sports show. Let's keep talking sports. Let's kick off our last segment here, probably about 10 to 12 minutes left in the show here. We're going to start it off with hockey with the Caps. Now, the Caps had a really rough start to the week. They lost to the Stars, which ended their 10-game road winning streak. It's a streak we knew had to happen eventually. So it happens. They lost to the Stars in Dallas, and then they lost to Chicago, which was kind of a rough loss, but they recovered yesterday by beating the Hurricanes 3-1. So 1-2 on the week puts them at 22-8-2 on the season, 46 points total. Despite the losing record this week, it still has them on top of their division, the Metropolitan Division, and on top of the Eastern Conference. Now, they're not on top by much. We're only talking 1 or 2 points in both cases, but they still maintain the lead, and doing that despite going 1-2 in a week is a really good place to be. Now, player of the week was a little bit difficult this week. The team only scored a total of 6 goals, and they had 6 different goal scorers to do it. A couple of guys ended up with 2 assists. Jacob Vrana, Andrew Mangiapane, I believe Lars Eller did, maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois. But you know what? When a team only has 1 win in a week, I think usually a good rule of thumb is to go with the best player in the win as the player of the week. And that award goes to Charlie Lindgren, the goaltender, who had 24 saves on 25 shots, including one of the best saves we've seen all season. I believe it was in the second period, a whirlwind glove save on a breakaway to save a goal. So that was a great play by Lindgren. He also played the game against the Stars where he gave up 2 even strength and 1 power play goal. So it gave up 3 goals on 20-ish shots. Not the greatest game, not an awful game. Normally games that, this year historically or so far this season, the team has been able to overcome a 3 goals being given up by the goaltender, but it just was not the case in this one. A couple of people who watched the game live, I wasn't able to, said that the Caps really just had a couple of bad bounces go against them. And you're going to have games like that over an 82-game season, but the good news is that they don't happen too often, and they don't necessarily have a phenomenal impact on the final results. There was a little bit of Ovechkin news earlier this week. He will not be back this weekend, so they have a game tomorrow and Monday, a back-to-back, and then they go on a little break. I believe this was described as NHL's winter break. I guess they have like a 4 or 5 day break in the schedule because they don't play again until next Saturday, at which point there is a good chance that will be Ovechkin's return. He's been seen skating, he's been seen puck handling, he's looking good, and I think his return is on the horizon, and the timing is actually really good because I believe I saw that Lars Eller is dealing with some illness. He might be back even as well, but the team is getting some inconsistent play from some of their lower line wingers, so it might not be bad to add Ovechkin in and kind of bump the names kind of down the list to make the bottom lines a little bit stronger. I'm going to hold off on basketball, and the reason being is because the Wizards are currently playing. I want them to get a little bit deeper into the game so that I'm a little bit more sure of the result. So we're going to talk a little bit of baseball, just a couple of pieces of baseball news. Number one, Orioles made an interesting move this past week. They signed Japanese pitcher Tomoyuki Sugano. Now, Sugano was a 13-year veteran of the top Japanese baseball league, and he's been pretty darn good in that time. He has a career 2.45 ERA. He had a 1.67 ERA this past season. Puts up really good numbers. Consistently makes about 25 to 28 starts a season and goes deep into those starts. He averages about 6 2/3 an inning per start on his career. Gets good strikeouts as a ground ball pitcher. Very good command. That's his forte, especially at this point since he is now 35. Now, I like this move. I think it shores up the back end of the rotation, which was, at least at the moment, relying on two of Cade Povich, Albert Suarez, who I love Suarez, don't get me wrong, Trevor Rogers, and then Chase McDermott and Brandon Young, who were two projected rookies for the team. Relying on two of those to be in the back end of the rotation. So adding him adds a reliable arm with tons of experience against good competition. Now, I'm not saying he's going to come out and have a 2.45 ERA in the major leagues, because it's definitely a step up from the premier Japanese baseball leagues, but he is a guy, he's well-versed, he knows his pitches, he can probably coach some of the young guys as well. It's a 1-year deal, so it's a low-risk proposition, and if he can be a stable piece in the 4 or 5 spot in the rotation, I'm okay with that. I think the team still needs to add a more frontline starter, whether that's re-signing Corbin Burns, give me a Christmas gift, or if it's trading for a guy like Dylan Cease or Luis Castillo, or finding some other option on the market that would allow Dean Kramer, who currently is the 3. I think he fits best. His best role in the team is that 4/5 spot, and I think that's where Sugano fits as well. My concern with Sugano is he's a 35-year-old pitcher. How well is he going to hold up over 30 to 32 games? Once you get deep into the season, is he going to be that guy? Or is he going to benefit from when rosters expand and the team maybe goes to a 6-man rotation, him getting his start spread out a little bit more? You never know. Shout out to Rolf Kalish joining in. Mike, thank you for joining the Inter Report. Thank you very much, sir, on all of the congratulations. It's not over yet, sir. There's still lots of fight to go for that division, but good game today, and wish the Steelers the best of luck in their last 2 games. But yes, I like this move if it's accompanied by finding a frontline pitcher. If not, then I feel like the team maybe didn't do enough to address the rotation. I feel like it's putting a lot of faith in Kramer or Sugano to be the number 3 pitcher, and also to have one of Zach Eflin or Grayson Rodriguez as the ace for the entirety of the season. That might be a tall task. Other baseball team, the Nats keep missing on first base options. We've said it a couple times on this show, one of the missing pieces to this team, both currently and kind of long-term, long big picture, is a power-hitting first baseman to really stabilize and add a nice bat in the middle of the batting order. And the team keeps missing. Christian Walker signed this week. Paul Goldschmidt signed this week. Carlos Santana signed this week. Who's the guy from Cleveland? We just talked about him getting traded today. Cleveland's all-star first baseman, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, got traded today. So all of the first baseman options are quickly drying up. At this point, it's Pete Alonso or bust, basically. There's a couple of trade options on the market, but the Nationals just keep missing and missing and missing on their first base solutions, and it is starting to become frustrating as a fan, seeing a team that supposedly was interested in being players in free agency this offseason, and so far their big move has been to re-sign Michael Soroka, or to sign Michael Soroka off of the free agent market for the same amount that they would have paid Kyle Finnegan, but instead they passed on that. And let's touch on the Wizards. I think this one is pretty well locked up. They're playing the Bucks tonight. They're down 23 with 4.5 minutes left. I don't think they're going to make that comeback. So 1-2 on the week for them. I'm going to go ahead and call that one. Brings them to 4-22 on the season. They're not the Lizards because they won a game. Even though it's just one game, they did win it. Now, they are still the worst record, but it's really close. Is it the Hornet? Not the Hornets. I'm forgetting the Pelicans on the other side have played more games, so the record is weird, but the Wizards still have the lowest winning percentage. Player of the week, again, you look to the win, which was against the Hornets, and you look to see who was the best player in that game, and I couldn't really decide between Jordan Poole and Malcolm Brogdon. They both had really good games. Poole had 27 points on 50% shooting. Brogdon had 25 points on like 55% shooting. Both played well. Poole added a couple blocks and steals. Brogdon added some good assists. Both played well. Brogdon in his first game off of injury. The team is starting to get healthy. Brogdon is back and Corey Kispert's back. So, and I believe Sadiq Bey is not too far away from his introduction to the season. So to me, I think this, like I said, the team, like I've said before, the team is going to be making trades this season. They're going to be trading a lot of guys, but I think the timing had to make sense. I think they had to be healthy with all of their guys back before they dealt away a few pieces, just for roster depth and roster security. So with the team getting healthy, I do think that does mark the beginning of these more serious trade discussions involving guys like Jordan Poole, like Kyle Kuzma. He needs to be healthy, though, like Jonas Valanciunas. So we will indeed probably see some trades on the horizon for the Wizards. That will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all for tuning in live. Thank you to everybody who jumped in the chat room. It really means a lot. If you have not done so already, like I said, please follow us on all social media platforms: X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Follow yours truly at Let'sWine_IESR on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Tons of options to listen to us: Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, and more. Check out the website with the merchandise, the show pages, the blog, and so much more there. Shout out to our sponsors: Planet Jerky Premium Beef Brisket Jerky that's on a whole nother planet; Seal the Deal Wax Seals, custom wax seals. You bring the deal, we bring the seal. And to our new sponsor, Vital Apparel. Do not forget to use code IESR to get 15% off of their gym wear. Comfortable and inspiring, and helping them support their amazing journey as they donate the proceeds to support mental health research. Great cause. And of course, please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. One of my favorite social media posts regarding this topic is that you can afford an Uber or a taxi before you can afford a DUI. So please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. It is simply not worth it. I will not be going anywhere after this, and if you've been drinking, neither should you. So if you're at home, please stay put. Or if you're out and about enjoying your weekend, maybe you're catching the college football playoffs at your local bar or at a friend's house and you're enjoying a fun beverage to go along with that. Whatever the occasion may be, please do not drink and drive. It is simply not worth it. Uber, Lyft, taxi, designated driver, shoot, Amazon, ship yourself home. I don't care how you do it. Just please get home safely. And once again, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week to talk more sports and to drink yet another fun holiday beverage. You are not going to want to miss it. This has been Mike Patt for Let's Whine About DMV Sports on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.